Spire Station was not a place for kind hearts. It floated in deep space like a rusted metal spider, full of shady deals, old machines, and people who had long forgotten the meaning of compassion. Most who came here wanted profit, power, or escape. Captain Elias Wren was different. He was a human traitor tough, yes, but with a mind that still remembered right and wrong. He'd stopped at Spire for repairs and supplies. His ship, the Nova Wren, was old and often needed fixing. Elias wasn't rich. He made enough to survive and he stayed away from trouble when he could. He walked past rows of junk dealers and alien food stalls. When he saw a crowd gathered near a metal platform, a tall insectoid auctioneer clanged a bell, its long arms waving for attention. Next sale, rare species, almost extinct. One of a kind, it shouted in trade common. Elias stepped closer. Curious, standing on the platform was a thin alien girl, quiet, still, and clearly not human. Her skin was pale gray with tiny ridges, her eyes completely white and unfocused. She was blind. Her face was different from any species Elias knew. Wide mouth, small nose, flat ears. To others, she might have looked strange or even ugly, but to Elias, she looked ... tired. Not dangerous, but strange. Just ... lost. The crowd mumbled. No one raised a hand. She can hear, smell, sense movement, the auctioneer said. Weak, but obedient. Starting price, 100 credits. Still no bids? 50? 20? The seller's voice grew annoyed. It's worth something. Even as a servant, or I'll take her, Elias said suddenly. The auctioneer froze. For how much? 10 credits, Elias said. That's all I'll give, and only because it's better than where she's going next. Laughter came from the crowd. Someone yelled, Waste of money, human! Bell sold. The girl didn't flinch. She turned her head slowly toward Elias. Her eyes couldn't see, but it felt like she was aware of everything around her. Elias stepped forward and held out his hand. Come on, he said gently. I'm not going to hurt you. She placed her hand in his. It was small, cool, and trembling. Then, as they walked away, he felt her fingers squeeze his. Just once. Softly back on the Nova Wren, the girl sat quietly in the corner of the small crew lounge. Elias brought her food, soft bread, fruit slices, and warm soup. She didn't speak, but she listened carefully. She sniffed the air, touched the spoon gently, then began to eat slowly. Elias leaned back in his chair. You don't have to say anything. I don't even know if you understand me, but you're safe now. She looked in his direction and tilted her head slightly. Her expression was calm, but unreadable. I can't leave you at Spire. Those people, they don't see others as people, just objects. I don't work that way, the ship hummed. Softly, Elias turned on low lights, then pulled out a blanket and handed it to her. She touched the fabric carefully, then wrapped it around herself and curled up on the lounge seat. Guess I'll call you Nova, he said, like the ship, until you tell me otherwise. She smiled just a little and then closed her eyes. She didn't speak, but Elias noticed something strange. She began to hum. It wasn't a song he knew, just a few soft notes, like the wind through a cave or the chime of stars, peaceful, sad, beautiful. The next day, Elias showed her around the ship. Nova could move slowly but surely, counting her steps, using her hands to feel the walls. She traced the edges of each doorway, ran her fingers across panels, and even paused to feel the soft rumble of the ship's engine through the floor. She didn't need much. Food, quiet, and space to listen. Elias found himself talking to her, more and more, about the stars, about his past, about Earth. Nova never replied with words, but she would hum. The pitch changed depending on her mood. High when she was happy, low when she was scared, warm and soft when she was calm. Elias began to learn her. Sounds like learning a second language through music. One evening, he brought her a small metal music box, played a gentle tune when wound up. Nova touched it, then carefully turned the key herself. When the music played, her entire face lit up. Not with sight, but with emotion. She hummed along, different notes but in harmony. Elias blinked. "Are you answering the song?" She nodded. That night she hummed herself to sleep the next. Stop was a neutral planet called Luma's Rest. Elias needed fuel and a few spare parts. He left Nova safely on the ship, but when he returned, she was standing by the window, facing the stars. He stood beside her. "What do you see?" She didn't turn, but she lifted a hand and moved her fingers as if painting the stars in the air. Then she hummed a single note sharp, clear and bright. It sounded like hope. That was when Elias knew. Nova wasn't just some lost alien girl. She was something more. A mystery. A melody waiting to be understood, and deep in the stars. Her song was about to wake up something no one had heard in a very long time. Nova had been on the Nova Rin for a few weeks now. Life aboard the ship was quiet and peaceful, something she had likely never known before. She still didn't speak in words, but her gentle humming continued. To Elias, her music had become part of the ship's background, like the hum of the engines or the soft beep of control panels. Elias often found himself talking while she listened. He told her about his travels, asteroid mines, dusty colony planets, forgotten spaceports, and strange alien creatures. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she hummed back softly, and that was all he needed. She had no name, at least not one she could say. But Nova seemed to fit her. She liked the name, could tell by the way she would repeat a high note when he said it, like a musical echo. One day, Elias sat in the ship's small workroom, repairing a cracked fuel line sensor. Nova entered quietly and stood nearby, head tilted. "You don't like silence, do you?" Elias asked. Nova didn't answer. Instead, she tapped her fingers against the wall 3 times, then a pause. It made a pattern. Then she hummed a soft note that matched the rhythm. Elias set down his tool. "Are you trying to talk?" She tapped again. This time the rhythm changed, and she added another note. Elias realized she wasn't just humming. She was using patterns and tones of communication. "You speak with music," he said slowly. Nova turned her head toward him and smiled, curious. Elias contacted a xenobiologist named Dr. Harvin through a long-range message. He was an expert in rare alien species and owed Elias a favor. After sending a short video of Nova's hums, Harvin responded quickly. "This is rare," he said. "She's an Iolari, thought to be extinct. Never developed weapons, never fought. They used music vibration, tone, and resonance to communicate and share knowledge. Peaceful people, very private. Most were wiped out or captured during the Wars of Union." Elias frowned. Captured. Collectors' black markets. Some were taken for experiments or displayed as living art. It was cruel. That girl on your ship might be one of the last. The idea made Elias's chest feel heavy. "She's not a pet. She's a person," Elias said firmly. "I know. Be careful with her," Dr. Harvin replied. "She might carry memory songs your galaxy has forgotten." That night, Elias found Nova sitting in the storage bay, surrounded by small tools and pieces of scrap metal. She had arranged them in rows and was tapping them gently, making different sounds. He sat beside her and watched. She pointed to one metal piece and tapped it, ding. Then she tapped another, dong. Then she tapped both in a pattern. Ding dash dong dash ding dash ding. Elias tapped the pattern back. She smiled. He realized she was teaching him her language, one rhythm at a time. Over the next few days, Elias installed small chimes, soft metal panels, and sound pads in the hallways of the Nova Ren. Nova explored every corner, using the new sounds to see. When she walked past a chime, it made a note. When she tapped a panel, it echoed slightly. It was like she was creating her own path through the ship through music. One morning, Elias woke up to a soft melody playing in the lounge. He followed the sound and found Nova sitting in front of the ship's speaker system, humming into it. The system was reacting to her notes, repeating them back with a harmonic echo. She was playing with it like a duet with the ship. "You're amazing," Elias said. Nova hummed a soft, happy note, but the peaceful days didn't last forever. While flying past the edges of a quiet star system, the ship picked up a faint signal. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't even in a known language. It was music. Soft, ancient, and full of emotion. Very similar to Nova's songs. Elias played it over the speakers. Nova froze, then tears formed in her white eyes. She hummed. Back, the ship's sensors glitched. The same signal responded an exact match in harmony. It wasn't a recording, it was someone answering. Elias stared at the screen. There's someone out there, speaking your language. Nova stood very still. Then, slowly, she touched her chest and hummed a few strong notes, clear and full of energy. She was saying something important. What is it? Elias asked. She placed her hand gently on his, then pointed at the star map. The signal had come from a sector far away deep in uncharted space. You want to go there? Elias said. Nova nodded. Elias hesitated. The place was outside safe travel. Zones, pirates, space storms, unmapped wormholes. But then he looked at her face, hopeful, alive, no longer silent. He smiled. All right, Nova, let's go find your song. They set a course toward the unknown system. As the Nova Wren jumped into hyperspace. Nova sat beside Elias in the cockpit, fingers dancing along the armrest, creating small rhythms as if guiding the ship forward with her melody. Elias didn't know what they would find. But for the first time in years, he felt something powerful inside him too. Purpose. The journey into unknown space was not easy. The maps had no names for the star systems they crossed. Some were dark and lifeless. Others were full of strange energy waves that made the ship's systems flicker. But Elias kept going. He looked. At Nova often, she seemed calm, but focused. Her humming had changed. It was no longer soft or playful. It was deeper, now full of memory, as if she was calling out to something from the past. They were heading toward the source of the mysterious musical signal. It came once every few hours, always the same pattern of notes. It sounded like someone was trying to be heard, but from very far away. After 4 days in deep space, they reached the edge of an asteroid field. It wasn't natural. The rocks were broken parts of old ships and space stations, and most of them looked like they had been destroyed a long time ago. Looks like a battlefield, Elias said, checking the scanners. Nova stood behind him, holding onto the back of the pilot chair. Her head turned slowly, listening to the ship's hum and the quiet sound of the signal in the background. Suddenly, she stepped forward and tapped the controls, gently 3 taps, and 1 hum. Elias recognized the pattern. You want to stop? Here, he asked. Nova nodded. They floated slowly into the asteroid field. Elias moved carefully, avoiding sharp metal and spinning debris. Nova stood quietly, humming low and slow. Her fingers moved as if she was remembering something. Then the ship's sensors picked up. Something unusual, a small pod floating in the wreckage. It looked like it had been built hundreds of years ago, but somehow it was still powered. Elias brought the pod into the cargo bay using the ship's tractor beam. It was a round metal shape with 1 window. Inside was a recording device. He powered it on. The sound that came out was a song. Soft, lonely. Almost the same as Nova's first hum when he met her. Nova stepped forward. She reached out and touched the pod. Her hand trembled. Her voice came. Out not words, but a full, rich melody. For the first time, Elias heard her sing. The ship's walls seemed to vibrate gently with her voice. It wasn't just a song, it was a message. Later, Elias sent a copy of the song to Dr. Harvin. The scientist replied quickly. This is big, he said through the cum. That pod is over 300 years old. It belonged to the Ilari Defense Circle, a peaceful team that recorded everything during the war. They didn't fight, they sang. They recorded their history and sound. This song might be the last record of their homeworld. Elias frowned. What happened to their world? Harvin sighed. Destroyed during the galactic conflict. They were neutral, but they refused to help build weapons that made them enemies to both sides. Most were wiped out. Some escaped, some didn't. Elias looked at Nova, who was resting now, curled up in a blanket near the pod. She survived somehow, Elias said. She must have been born long after the war. But this song, it's inside her. Harvan nodded. Her mind is like a vault. If she remembers more songs, she could help rebuild the history of her people. We've lost everything about the Eilari. No books, no pictures, only melodies. That night, Elias sat alone in the lounge listening to Nova's first full song. He realized something. Her songs were not just music. They carried feelings, messages, and memories. Maybe she had more inside her. Maybe she was the last storyteller of her kind. The next morning, Nova woke early. She walked into the cockpit, humming softly. Elias followed. Suddenly, she pressed both hands on the control panel and sang one long, deep tone. The ship's scanners lit up. A hidden beacon had been triggered. From deep behind one of the large asteroids, a signal pulsed back. It was faint but clear. Coordinates another place. Elias smiled. You found something, didn't you? Nova nodded. Then she tapped 3 times on the console and let out a new note, a tone Elias hadn't heard before. It felt like hope. They followed the beacon through a narrow field of debris, past old broken satellites and silent wrecks. At the end was a large moon hidden in the shadow of a dead planet. It didn't appear on any map. As they approached, Nova began to hum again. Suddenly, the signal returned louder, stronger, and different. This time it wasn't a recording. It was someone responding? Another Elias turned to Nova. Her face was frozen with emotion. Her fingers curled tight, and she sang along. Low note. The reply came instantly. A perfect match. They landed on the surface of the moon. It was quiet, in gray, with no cities or machines. But under the rocks, hidden in a small valley, was a cave with soft blue lights glowing from within. They entered together inside. The walls were covered in strange crystals that sang softly when touched. And there, waiting in the center, was an older Alarethan with white skin like Nova's and glowing scars on their arms. Nova stepped forward. The two of them touched hands, and then they sang. Not one song, but many. A conversation of melodies. Elias stood back, amazed. After a long while, the older Elias tapped the floor 3 times. Nova translated through hums and tones. The message was clear. She is the last born of the Eilari diplomatic line. Her songs are sacred. She carries the memory of a lost people. Elias sat down, stunned. Nova, the blind alien girl sold for 10 credits on a forgotten station, was more than he ever imagined. She was history. She was memory. She was the last voice of an entire civilization, and now. Elias sat quietly in the Nova Wren's cockpit. The moon was still visible in the rear scanner. Down there, the small Eilari community lived hidden in the cave of singing crystals. It was peaceful and beautiful, but Elias couldn't stop thinking Nova War. Leora, as her people now called her, had changed everything. She was not just a quiet, blind girl with a gentle smile. She was the last descendant of Eilari diplomats. Her songs carried old knowledge. Her memory was like a living library. And now, after years of silence and loneliness, she had found others like her, but she had also made a choice. She came back. With Elias, she wasn't staying in the cave, she had told the elders. Through her music, that she wanted to travel to share the forgotten songs of her people with the galaxy. The Eilari had stayed hidden for too long. Leora believed it was time to sing again. As the ship floated in orbit, Elias looked at her. She was sitting near the observation window, silent but smiling gently. The stars were bright outside, millions of lights scattered across the dark, but she could not see them. She could only feel them. Elias had an idea. "Come with me," he said softly. She tilted her head toward his voice, then stood and followed. They docked at a nearby space station Astra, a place known for research, art, and peace. Humans and aliens from many species worked there. The station had a special room called the Stellar Dome, designed for blind visitors. It used sound and vibration to turn light into music. Every star in the sky created a different note. Movement of planets added rhythm. Even the wind of solar storms could be heard like a whisper. The result was a sound map of the universe music created by the stars themselves. Elias had called ahead and asked for a private showing. He had told them, "This isn't just for her, it's for something greater than all of us." But the stellar dome was dark and round like a planetarium. The floor was smooth and warm. The walls curved up and around like the inside of a giant bowl. Leora stepped in slowly, guided by Elias's hand. Then he let go. Soft sounds began to play, the music of the stars. At first it was quiet. Then came layers of tones, bright ones from young stars, low hums from old ones, and pulsing notes from binary suns. Comets added short glides of sound. The entire galaxy was singing. Leora stood still. Her body trembled. Then she began to hum along. Her voice matched the stars perfectly. The dome responded. The systems built to translate light into music suddenly began changing with her voice. The harmony grew deeper, richer, more alive. Leora's presence added something new, something ancient. The scientists watching from outside the dome were amazed. The system had never done this before. Inside, Elias sat on the floor and listened. He didn't move. His heart beat slowly. Full of wonder, this was not a show anymore. This was a reunion. The stars were remembering their song. Leora walked slowly in circles, her hand out touching the air like she could feel each note. Her voice rose and fell like the waves of an ocean. She added melodies the stars had forgotten. She sang pain, joy, silence, and rebirth. In notes, not words. Tears rolled down Elias's face. Not out of sadness, but awe. He had never heard anything so beautiful, and it had come from someone no one else had wanted. After nearly an hour, the music slowly faded. Leora knelt on the floor. She was breathing hard, but she smiled a real full smile. Her white eyes sparkled with peace. Elias stepped forward and knelt beside her. That was the surprise, he whispered. This place, I wanted to give you the stars. Placed a hand on his and sang one soft single note. It meant thank you. Later, the scientists from Astropoint came to speak with Elias. We recorded everything, one said. She awakened something in the system we didn't even know was there. Another added, the dome reacted like it recognized her voice, as if her people were once part of its design. Elias nodded. Her songs are older than any tech you. Have her people shared their music with the universe before any war started? Maybe the dome remembered that. The researchers asked if Leora would return to perform again. Elias looked at her. She hummed a calm tone and nodded. She says yes, Elias said. But not for a show. For healing. Word spread across nearby systems. The girl who sang with the stars, the blind alien who made machines come alive, some called her the songkeeper. Others simply said she was hope. Messages came from peaceful leaders. Historians and artists all wanting to meet her. Elias made sure to protect her space, her time, her rest. She wasn't a performer, she was a messenger, and she chose who she wanted to sing for. Back on the Nova Ren, Elias installed a special sound chamber, a small round room filled with soft musical walls. Like the stellar dome, Leora used it to practice. Sometimes, he would sit outside and listen for hours. One evening, she stepped out and held something in her hand, a small music box he had given her when they first met. She wound it gently. The melody played simple, human, soft. Then, she added, her hum together, it became a new song, a human tune, mixed with an Ilari soul. Elias listened. He smiled. They were not so different after all. The ship Nova Ren moved slowly through quiet space. After the event at Astropoint, things had changed. People from many worlds had heard about the blind alien girl who sang with the stars. Some believed it was only a strange story. Others believed it was something more, a message from the past that had returned. But for Elias and Leora, it wasn't about fame. It was about finding more pieces of her lost people. And now, they had a clue. One morning, Elias stood in the control room, sipping hot tea and checking the ship's signals. Leora was nearby, sitting cross-legged on a soft mat. She hummed gently, as she often did. Suddenly, the signal scanner blinked. A new tone was coming in, very faint, but repeating. Elias leaned closer. "Is that another Alari song?" he played it on the speaker. The melody was soft and shaky, but there were clear patterns in the notes. Different from Leora's style, but still from the same language of sound. Leora stopped humming. She stood quickly, her face full of surprise. She stepped toward the console and listened carefully. Then she replied. Her voice matched the tones, one by one, with slight changes. It was like answering a question. And the signal responded back. They weren't hearing a recording. Someone was replying in real time. Elias quickly checked the location. The signal was coming from a far system on the edge of a lawless zone space that had no government, no rules, and was known for danger. Pirates, smugglers, and criminals hid there, but that was where the voice had come from. Elias looked at Leora. It could be a trap. Leora hummed a short, low note, firm, brave. She wanted to go. The journey took 2 days. As they flew closer, the stars grew fewer, and the space became darker. The last planet in the system was rocky and cold. There was nothing on the surface. But beneath it there was life. A small underground base was sending out the signal. It had power, heat, and a working shield system. Elias flew low and sent a gentle signal, 3 short tones. Peaceful greeting. The base replied with the same melody. It was time to land. They entered the base slowly. The doors opened with a hiss. Inside the lights were dim. Machines hummed quietly. The air smelled of metal and dust. And then we saw her. Another Ilari, older than Leora, with silver lines on her skin and deeper scars. Her eyes were also blind, but her face lit up the moment she heard Leora hum. The two walked toward each other and gently touched hands. Then they sang. Elias stood quietly. The music that filled the room was deep, powerful, and full of history. It was not just a greeting, it was a reunion of 2 lost voices. The older Alari's name was Saren. Through a mix of music and basic translation tech, Elias learned her story. Saren had escaped the destruction of the Ilari homeworld many years ago. She had lived in silence, hiding her voice, afraid of being hunted. But she never forgot the songs. When she picked up Leora's transmission weeks ago, the same. When Elias had sent out from the Star Dome, she couldn't believe it. She thought her kind were all gone. But now, here was Leora, child of the old blood, born in captivity, yet carrying the ancient music within her. They spent hours together, singing and sharing harmonies. Serna knew many old songs, but Leora knew new ones, songs that had never been recorded. Songs passed through dreams and quiet memories. Together, they made a choir of 2. Later, Elias sat with both of them, drinking hot water and eating dry food packs. He smiled. "So, there are more of you." Saren nodded. "There may be others," her translator said. "Scattered, hiding, listening." Elias leaned forward. "If we send a strong enough signal together, maybe they'll come." Saren and Leora looked at each other. Then they both began to hum. A new song was born. A message not just of loss, but of return. Back aboard the Nova Ren, Elias activated the long-range broadcast system. Leora and Saren stood together, singing into the central mic. Their voices blended beautifully, old and young, past and future. The signal went out in all directions. It wasn't a message of power. It wasn't a call for war. It was a welcome. A peaceful melody that said, "We are alive. We remember. Come home." Days passed. They waited. Then the signals began to return. First 1, then 2, then 7 different voices. Different songs, all Ellery, each. With a note, a pattern, a rhythm of identity, the music of a lost people was waking up again. One signal came from a space artist's colony, another from a desert moon. One was even coming from deep inside a large trade hub. Hidden beneath noise and traffic, Each new voice told its story and song. Some were born after the war, some were survivors, but all of them were waiting for someone to listen now. They were being heard. Elias looked at Leora with wonder. "You did this?" Leora touched his hand and hummed gently. Then she added a new tone, light, joyful, full of motion. Elias laughed. "You mean we did this?" She nodded. Cern decided to stay on the ship. Together, the three of them set out to find more Alari following signals, visiting quiet corners of the galaxy and bringing forgotten voices back into the light as they flew through space. The Nova Ren was no longer just a cargo ship. It had become a moving song, a home for peace, a ship of stories. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport of the Nova Ren. Elias sat quietly at the control panel, hands resting lightly on the console. Beside him, Leora hummed softly, her white eyes closed, feeling the vibrations of the ship and the distant music of the galaxy. For the first time since their journey began, Elias allowed himself to feel hope, not just for Leora or the Ilari, but for all the worlds scattered across space. After months of searching, they had found more Ilari survivors. Each meeting was different. Some were cautious, some joyful, but all carried the weight of their history and song. The galaxy had never known such a reunion. For the Ilari, it was a chance to heal old wounds and remember who they once were. But there was a challenge. Many species and, even some humans, still mistrusted the Ilari. Their past of neutrality and refusal to fight had been seen by some as weakness. Others feared their strange music in different ways. Leora understood this. She had lived in fear and isolation. But now she wanted to change minds. Elias arranged a meeting at a nearby diplomatic station. It was neutral ground, a place where many species met to resolve disputes and forge alliances. The hall was large and filled with representatives, humans, aliens of all kinds, and even robotic envoys. They were curious about Leora and her people. When Leora entered, she didn't speak in words. Instead, she stood at the center of the room, closed her eyes, and began to hum. Her voice filled the hall. Soft notes rippled like waves, growing stronger with each moment. The music told a story of peace, of loss, of hope, and of the desire to live alongside others. At first, the room was silent. Then slowly, some representatives closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. A few smiled, some nodded. The barrier of distrust began to crack. Elias watched proudly. His quiet, blind companion was breaking walls with nothing but her voice. After the song ended, human ambassadors stepped forward. "That was moving," she said. "Your people have suffered much. We have much to learn from each other." Leora opened her eyes and hummed a gentle tone. It was a promise of friendship. Over the next week's news of the Ilari spread across the galaxy. Scientists studied their harmonic language. Artists were inspired by their melodies. Historians worked to piece together their lost culture from the songs Leora and Saren had shared. Humans, too, began to see the Ilari not as weak or strange, but as a symbol of resilience and harmony. One evening, as the Nova Ren drifted near, a blue-green planet, Elias and Leora stood together in the observation room. The stars twinkled far beyond the windows. Elias said softly, "You've done something incredible. You brought your people back from silence?" Leora smiled, a soft hum following her words. "You gave us more than a home," Elias said. "You gave us a voice." Leora reached out, touching Elias's hand. Her voice rose in a final melody, clear, bright, full of life. It was a song of gratitude and new beginnings, and Elias, the human who had bought an ugly blind alien girl for 10 credits at a forgotten auction, was no longer just a trader. He was a part of something greater. Together, they had created a harmony between humanity and a lost alien race. Together, they had shown the galaxy that kindness, understanding, and music could change the stars.